My hands are shaking so violently I can barely hold my phone. The vanilla latte I ordered 5 minutes ago sits untouched, growing cold, while my entire world crumbles around me in this crowded coffee shop. "Your sister just left," the barista had said with that innocent smile. "She was using your credit card again. Again. Again." The word echoes in my skull like a death sentence because Ivory lives 3 states away. Except, the security footage on my phone screen tells a different story. There she is, clear as day, wearing MY red coat, MY grandmother's pearl earrings, swiping MY credit card with the casual confidence of someone who owns it. Someone who owns my life. My chest feels like it's caving in. People are staring now. A woman in designer jeans whispers to her friend about the crazy lady having a breakdown. But I can't stop the hyperventilation. Can't stop the way my vision tunnels as months of weird incidents suddenly click into place like puzzle pieces forming a nightmare. The restaurant charges I didn't make. The neighbor who said I looked different, happier. James mentioning conversations that never happened. My coworker asking why I missed meetings I never scheduled. Oh God. Oh God, James. I'm scrolling frantically through my bank statements now, and every swipe burns like acid. Bella Vista Restaurant, our anniversary spot. The boutique where I bought my engagement dress. The grocery store in my neighborhood, charged on days I never left my apartment because I was drowning in grief over losing Mom. While I was planning our mother's funeral, crying myself to sleep every night, barely able to function, she was out there living as me. Better than me. The coffee shop door chimes, and I look up with wild, desperate eyes. What if she comes back? What if I have to face this theft of my very existence while surrounded by strangers sipping their morning lattes? But the person walking in isn't Ivory. It's a businessman checking his watch, oblivious to the fact that my entire reality just shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I need to get home. I need to check everything, my email, my social media, my work accounts. Because if she's been using my credit card again, then this isn't some recent desperate act. This is systematic. Planned. Calculated. My sister didn't just steal from me while I was grieving. She's been erasing me completely, one transaction at a time, and I never even noticed I was disappearing. 6 months ago, I had what everyone called the perfect life. I'd wake up at 6:30 a.m. in my downtown apartment, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the morning light just right. James would already be gone for his early gym session, but he'd leave little notes on my coffee maker. Morning, beautiful. Don't forget we're trying that new Thai place tonight. Love you, Jay. Those notes made me smile every single morning. Even now, thinking about his careful handwriting on those yellow sticky notes makes my chest ache with longing for simpler times. I was senior marketing executive at Hartwell & Associates, not just surviving in the corporate world, but thriving. My campaigns had increased client retention by 30% over 2 years. Robert Hartwell himself would nod approvingly when I presented quarterly reports, and my colleagues actually listened when I spoke in meetings. I'd worked so hard to get there, climbing from junior associate to senior executive in just 5 years. James and I had been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months. He was everything I'd convinced myself I wanted: stable, successful, predictable in the best way. A tax attorney who brought me flowers every Friday and never forgot important dates. We had our routines: Sunday morning farmers market, Wednesday date nights, weekend trips to his parents' lake house where his mother would show me photo albums and talk about grandchildren like they were inevitable. I should have been completely happy. But there was always this tiny voice whispering that something was missing. Some spark, some wildness I'd given up when I chose security over passion. I'd buried that voice deep, telling myself that butterflies fade but stability lasts. My relationship with Ivory was complicated. She was everything I wasn't: spontaneous, artistic, unapologetically messy. Where I planned every detail of my life, she lived moment to moment. Where I climbed corporate ladders, She painted murals and waited tables between creative projects. She'd call maybe once a month, usually needing money or wanting to complain about whatever guy had broken her heart that week. "You're so lucky, Ophelia," she'd say during those calls. "You have it all figured out. I wish I could be more like you, organized, successful, put together. Sometimes I feel like I'm living the wrong life, you know?" I'd always brush off her comments, send her a few $100s when she needed rent money, and feel a mixture of love and frustration that only sisters understand. She was brilliant, her art was genuinely beautiful, but she couldn't seem to get her life together. I wanted to help her, but I also secretly felt superior. I was the responsible one. The successful one. The one who made good choices. Mom was our anchor point. She lived in Connecticut, halfway between Ivory and me, and she was the one who kept our family connected. Sunday calls where she'd update us on her garden, her book club, her neighbor's drama. She was proud of my success but worried about Ivory constantly. "Your sister needs guidance," she'd say during our calls. "She looks up to you more than you realize. Maybe you could spend more time with her?" I always promised I would, after the next big project, after the promotion, after the wedding planning settled down. There was always something more pressing than family time. The warning signs were there, even then. Ivory's questions during our calls had grown more specific over the past year. She'd ask about my morning routine, my favorite restaurants, how I styled my hair for work presentations. "I want to be more professional like you," she'd explain when I'd tease her about the detailed questions. Looking back, I realized she wasn't asking for advice. She was taking notes. But in my perfect life bubble, surrounded by my successful career and stable relationship and predictable routines, I never saw the danger coming. I thought the biggest threat to my happiness was wedding planning stress or quarterly sales targets. I had no idea that the person I'd shared a womb with, the one I'd protected from playground bullies and helped with homework, was studying me like an exam she planned to ace. The last normal conversation we had was about Mom's birthday party. Ivory had laughed about something James said, mentioned how lucky I was to have found someone so devoted. "He really worships you, doesn't he?" she'd said, and I'd felt that warm glow of being genuinely loved. I thought my life was untouchable. I thought the people who mattered most would always be there, always be mine. I was wrong about everything. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after Mom's funeral. I was drowning in paperwork, insurance claims, estate documents, thank you cards I couldn't bring myself to write. The grief was suffocating, making even simple tasks feel impossible. I hadn't showered in 3 days, hadn't answered my phone, hadn't even opened my laptop. That's when my credit card statement arrived. Most of it was normal automatic payments, the florist for Mom's funeral, grocery deliveries I'd been surviving on. But there, between the mundane charges, was something that made my blood freeze. Bella Vista Restaurant. $127.43. Last Saturday, 7:30 p.m. I stared at that line until my eyes burned. Saturday night I'd been curled up on my couch in pajamas, crying over Mom's photo albums. I remembered every moment of that evening because the loneliness had been crushing. James was at his brother's bachelor party, and I'd spent hours sobbing into a pint of ice cream. There was absolutely no way I'd been at Bella Vista. Our favorite restaurant. The place where James proposed. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my recent calls. No record of making a reservation. No photos from that night except a blurry selfie I'd taken around 8 p.m., mascara streaked, holding tissues. "You're losing it," I whispered to myself. Grief makes people forget things. But the charge was right there. Real. Undeniable. I called the restaurant, my voice shaking. "Hi, this is Ophelia Blackwood. I have a question about a charge from last Saturday." "Oh yes, Miss Blackwood," the hostess chirped. "You had the salmon special, right? You seemed to be celebrating something." You were glowing. "Your date was very handsome too." "My date? The room started spinning. James was supposed to be in Atlantic City. But what if he'd come back early? What if we'd gone out and I'd somehow blocked it out? Trauma could do that, couldn't it? Can you describe him? I managed to ask. Tall, brown hair, that gorgeous smile. He kept calling you beautiful and you kept laughing at everything he said. You two seemed so happy together. I hung up, my heart hammering against my ribs. That sounded like James. But it also sounded like a stranger describing someone who wasn't me. I hadn't really laughed since Mom's diagnosis 3 months ago. The apartment felt too quiet suddenly. Too empty. Like someone had been here, moving through my space, and now the energy was all wrong. I walked to my bedroom, studying everything with new eyes. Was my perfume bottle in a different spot? Had someone been sleeping in my bed while I was at Mom's during those final weeks? You're paranoid, I told my reflection in the bathroom mirror. But the woman staring back looked haunted, suspicious. Like she was seeing danger in shadows. My phone buzzed. A text from James, missing you, babe. Can't wait to hear about your quiet night when I get back. Quiet night. Last Saturday. When according to my credit card, I'd been living it up at Bella Vista with a mystery man. Something was very, very wrong. I couldn't let it go. The credit card charges, the restaurant hostess describing a version of me that didn't exist. For 3 days, I obsessed over every transaction, every strange detail, until I made a decision that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. I was going to follow my own paper trail. Thursday evening, I drove to Bella Vista and sat in my car across the street like some deranged stalker. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. Part of me hoped I'd sit there all night, prove to myself I was losing my mind, and go home to heal from grief like a normal person. But at 7:15 p.m., I saw her. At first, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It was like looking at a funhouse mirror version of myself. Same height, same build, but she was radiant. Confident. Wearing my black wrap dress, the one I'd been looking for all week, and my grandmother's pearl necklace that had gone missing after Mom's funeral. Ivory. My sister. Looking more like me than I'd looked in months. She was walking toward the restaurant entrance with a man whose silhouette made my stomach drop into hell. Tall, broad shoulders, that familiar gait I'd watched cross our apartment threshold 1,000 times. James. No, 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 no. The word escaped my lips like a prayer, like if I said it enough times, reality would rearrange itself into something bearable. But there they were. James holding the door open for my sister. James's hand on the small of her back, the exact spot where he always touched me. The gesture was so intimate, so automatic, that my chest felt like it was caving in on itself. I watched them walk to our table. Our table. The corner booth where James had proposed 8 months ago, where we celebrated every anniversary, every promotion, every small victory in our perfectly planned life. My phone was in my hands before I consciously decided to call him. I watched through the restaurant window as a phone lit up on their table. Ivory glanced at the screen, smiled that devastating smile I recognized from our childhood, and answered. Hey baby, she said in my voice. Perfect inflection, perfect tone. If I'd been blind, I would have sworn I was listening to a recording of myself. Running a bit late for dinner. Order me the salmon. She was using my phone number. Answering my calls. Living my relationship. The salmon. The hostess had said I ordered salmon last Saturday. But it wasn't me. It was never me. I hung up and watched James lean across the table to kiss her forehead, the way he'd kissed mine every morning for 3 years. Watched her laugh at something on her phone, probably at how easily she'd just fooled me. Watched him take her hand, that gold band I'd picked out for him catching the restaurant's warm lighting. How long? The question burned through my brain like acid. How long had this been happening? How long had my fiancé been in love with my sister while I planned our wedding? How long had she been practicing to be me? My reflection in the car window looked wild, broken. Hair unwashed, eyes rimmed red from weeks of crying, wearing the same sweatpants I'd had on for 4 days. I looked like what I was, a woman destroyed by grief. She looked like what I used to be, polished, confident, alive. The worst part wasn't watching James betray me. The worst part was seeing how good they looked together. How natural it seemed. She was everything I'd stopped being since Mom got sick, vibrant, present, engaging. She was playing the role of Ophelia Blackwood better than I'd been playing myself. I started the car with shaking hands, my vision blurred by tears I couldn't control. But before I drove away, I took photos. Evidence of the impossible. Proof that my entire world had been built on lies. As I pulled out of the parking lot, one thought crystallized in my mind with terrifying clarity. If she was here, living my life, wearing my clothes, sleeping with my fiancé, what else had she taken? What was left of me to reclaim? The drive home felt like a funeral procession for the woman I used to be. Because the Ophelia Blackwood who'd woken up that morning was already dead. What remained was someone I'd never met before, someone hungry for truth, no matter how much it might destroy what was left of my heart. I made it to my apartment building's elevator before the dam broke completely. The security guard nodded pleasantly as I walked through the lobby, probably seeing just another resident coming home from dinner. He couldn't see that I was actively disintegrating, that every step forward was a monumental act of will. By the time the elevator doors closed, the sobs were tearing out of my throat like animals trying to escape a burning building. Inside my apartment, I collapsed on the hardwood floor and screamed until my voice went hoarse. Not crying, screaming. Raw, primal sounds that I'd never heard myself make before. The neighbors could probably hear me, but I didn't care. Let them think I was losing my mind. I was. The photos from the restaurant glowed accusingly on my phone screen. James and Ivory, looking like the perfect couple. Looking like us, but better. More alive. More real than we'd ever been. I crawled to my laptop, my hands shaking so violently I could barely type. Email first. Please let my email still be mine. Wrong password. My social media accounts. Wrong password. My work portal. Wrong password. She'd locked me out of my own life systematically, professionally. While I'd been holding Mom's hand as she died, planning the funeral, drowning in grief, Ivory had been changing passwords, taking control, erasing me piece by piece. But the banking app still worked. And what I found there made my breakdown complete. Months of charges I didn't recognize. My favorite coffee shop on days I was at the hospital. My gym membership being used while I was planning Mom's funeral. Sephora purchases when I hadn't worn makeup in weeks. She'd been living as me for months, maybe longer, becoming better at being Ophelia Blackwood than I was. The apartment felt like a crime scene. Every surface looked contaminated now. Had she been here? Had they been here together, in my bed, laughing about how pathetic the real me had become? I checked my drawers with forensic intensity. My red lipstick, gone. The black dress she'd worn tonight, missing from my closet. My grandmother's necklace that I'd accused the funeral home of losing, she'd been wearing it around James's neck. The worst part was how normal everything looked to the outside world. My phone kept buzzing with work emails, except they were being answered by someone else. My Instagram showed a steady stream of posts about healing and self-care and grateful for supportive people in my life. Posts I'd never made, using my face from old photos, crafting a narrative where grieving Ophelia was slowly getting better. She was even performing my recovery better than I was living my breakdown. I called my best friend Sarah, desperate for someone real, someone who knew me. But when she answered, her voice was strange, distant. "Oh, Ophelia. You sound different. Are you okay? You seemed so much better when we had lunch yesterday." Lunch. Yesterday I'd eaten crackers on my bathroom floor and cried for 3 hours. What did we talk about? I whispered. Your new meditation practice? How James has been so supportive during your healing journey. You said you were finally ready to get back to normal. I hung up. Even my best friend believed the performance more than she believed me. The isolation was suffocating. I was a ghost haunting my own life, watching someone else live it while I rotted away in this apartment. Everyone I cared about was being charmed by the improved version of me, the one who wasn't broken by grief, who could still laugh and smile and function in the world. But as I sat on my bathroom floor at 2 a.m., mascara streaked down my face, something cold and sharp began forming in my chest. Not just pain anymore. Something harder. Rage. She'd stolen my identity, my fiancé, my relationships, my job security, everything I'd spent years building. While I was at my most vulnerable, she'd systematically replaced me. But she'd made one critical mistake. She thought I was too broken to fight back. Too destroyed by grief to notice what was happening. Too weak to reclaim what was mine. She was about to learn that there's a difference between broken and defeated. And I was far from defeated. The woman crying on this bathroom floor was just the caterpillar. What emerged from this breakdown would be something else entirely. Something she wouldn't see coming until it was too late. 3 days after discovering the truth, I stopped crying. Not because the pain was gone, it still felt like shards of glass embedded in my ribcage, but because something colder had taken over. Something calculating. I was lying on my living room floor, staring at the ceiling, when the realization hit me like lightning. Screaming wouldn't give me back my life. But strategy would. I sat up slowly, my grief brain clearing for the first time in weeks. Ivory thought she'd won because I was broken. She was counting on me staying that way, helpless, invisible, irrelevant. But she'd underestimated one crucial thing. I hadn't become senior marketing executive at Hartwell & Associates by accident. I knew how to build campaigns. I knew how to research targets. I knew how to destroy competitors. The first step was reconnaissance. I created new email accounts, new social media profiles, began watching my own life like a private investigator. Every photo she posted as me, every location she checked into, every person she interacted with, I documented everything with the methodical precision of someone building a case. She was good at playing me, but she wasn't perfect. She'd posted a selfie at my favorite yoga studio, but tagged the wrong location. She'd shared a photo of my lunch at a restaurant I was allergic to. Small mistakes that only the real Ophelia would notice. But her biggest error was underestimating my professional network. I reached out to Marcus Chen, my college friend who worked in cybersecurity. Not as devastated Ophelia begging for help, but as the composed professional he remembered. I told him I suspected someone was hacking my accounts, technically true, and asked for his expertise in documenting the digital trail. Marcus was thorough. Within hours, he'd traced login locations, IP addresses, device signatures. The evidence was damning. Someone had been accessing my accounts from multiple locations over months, systematically changing passwords, monitoring my communications. This is sophisticated identity theft, he said, his face grim as we reviewed the data. Whoever did this has been planning it for a long time. They know your habits, your preferences, even your writing style. I nodded sympathetically, playing the concerned victim while my mind catalogued every piece of ammunition he was handing me. Next, I contacted Detective Rivera, who'd handled a fraud case for my company last year. Again, I presented this as unknown identity theft, not family betrayal. She helped me document everything properly, screenshots timestamped, financial records organized, a clear timeline of the theft. The perpetrator is bold, she observed, reviewing Ivory's activity. Most identity thieves try to stay invisible. This person is living openly as you. That suggests either desperation or extreme confidence. Or extreme stupidity, I thought but didn't say. Phase 3 was the most delicate. reconnecting with my professional life without alerting Ivory. I used my new secure accounts to reach out to Robert Hartwell directly, explaining that I'd been dealing with identity theft and requesting a private meeting to discuss my return to work. The meeting revealed everything. Ivory had been corresponding with my colleagues, scheduling meetings she never attended, even submitting project proposals in my name. She'd requested a 6-month extension of my leave, forging my signature, while simultaneously applying for my promotion. "We've been concerned," Robert admitted. "The woman who came to the office last week, something felt off. She seemed different. More confident, yes, but she couldn't answer basic questions about projects you'd led." That's when I knew I had her. While she'd been busy playing house with James, posting inspiring recovery content on social media, she'd been sloppy with the details that mattered most. My colleagues were already suspicious. My boss was already questioning her legitimacy. All I needed was the perfect stage for her downfall. The company Christmas party. December 15th. The annual event I'd helped plan for 3 years, where every client, colleague, and industry contact would be present. Where Ivory would undoubtedly appear as the triumphant Ophelia Blackwood, ready to accept accolades for work she'd never done. Where she'd expect to shine in front of 200 witnesses. I smiled for the first time in months, and it felt sharp as a blade. She wanted to be me so badly? Fine. But she was about to learn that being Ophelia Blackwood meant dealing with consequences she'd never anticipated. I'd spent years building my reputation, my relationships, my professional credibility. Now I was going to use every single connection to destroy her performance. The hunter had become the hunted, and she didn't even know the game had changed. The power shift began with something small, reclaiming my passwords. Working with Marcus, I systematically regained access to my accounts without triggering alerts. We timed it perfectly while Ivory was at my yoga class, posting inspirational quotes about healing and growth. The irony was delicious. Watching her panic when she couldn't log into my Instagram was the first taste of victory. She tried calling my phone from James's, but I'd already changed that number. Through my new anonymous accounts, I could see her growing frantic, posting from her own forgotten social media about technical difficulties and taking a digital detox. But the real satisfaction came from work. I'd arranged to meet Robert Hartwell at a coffee shop across town, bringing printed evidence of Ivory's digital footprint. Bank statements showing her purchases while she was supposed to be me. Security footage from my building showing her entering with my stolen key. Screenshots of her bragging to friends about living her sister's better life. "This is extraordinary," Robert said, studying the timeline. "She's been impersonating you for months. The promotion committee needs to see this immediately." That's when I made my first strategic strike. Instead of exposing everything at once, I asked him to quietly investigate her recent work submissions. Let her hang herself with her own ignorance. The results were devastating. The marketing proposal she'd submitted in my name contained fundamental errors about our biggest clients' brand guidelines, details I'd never get wrong after 3 years managing their account. Her project timelines ignored budget constraints I'd been navigating for months before Mom got sick. "We were planning to give you the promotion at the Christmas party," Robert said, his expression grim. "But now." "Don't cancel it yet," I said carefully. "Let's see what happens." Phase 2 was more dangerous, infiltrating her relationship with James. I hired a private investigator to document their daily routine. Where they went, what they did, how they interacted. The photos burned to look at, but they were ammunition. Evidence of adultery that would destroy any sympathy she might claim. The PI's report revealed something chilling: she wasn't just dating my fiancé. She was studying him. Learning his preferences, his schedule, his habits. She'd even convinced him to change his haircut to match his type, which was apparently the version of me she'd become. But James was starting to ask questions. The PI captured audio of him confronting her about inconsistencies. "You forgot our song again," he said during one argument. And yesterday you claimed you didn't remember our first date story. What's wrong with you lately? Her response was masterful. Grief changes people, James. I'm trying to become a better version of myself. Isn't that what you want? Watching the footage, I felt something dark twist in my stomach. Was I becoming like her? Manipulative? Calculating? The woman planning this elaborate revenge felt foreign to the Ophelia who used to leave encouraging notes for coworkers and donate to charity every month. But then I'd remember her wearing mom's necklace while kissing my fiancé, and the doubt would crystallize into cold determination. The final phase was psychological warfare. I began leaving subtle signs that someone was watching. A coffee cup left on the table at their usual cafe, with lipstick in my exact shade. A bouquet of flowers delivered to Ophelia Blackwood at James's office, the wrong ones he'd know I'd never choose. Anonymous tips to the building security about someone using stolen keycards. Ivory was unraveling. Her social media posts became erratic, defensive. She started looking over her shoulder in public places. James grew increasingly confused by her behavior, which she couldn't explain without revealing the truth. But she made one crucial mistake: she got greedy. Instead of laying low, she doubled down. Applied for a company credit card in my name. Started planning our wedding, sending invitations to my professional contacts. Even scheduled a meeting with my biggest client to discuss future collaborations. She was so confident in her performance, she forgot she was still stealing from someone who was very much alive and watching her every move. The Christmas party was 2 weeks away. 2 weeks until she'd stand in front of everyone who mattered in my professional world, expecting to be celebrated as Ophelia Blackwood's triumphant return. But the real Ophelia Blackwood had other plans. And she was ready to remind everyone exactly who they were really dealing with. The Hartwell and Associates Christmas Party. December 15th, 7 p.m. 200 guests, including every client, colleague, and industry contact that mattered. I arrived 30 minutes late, deliberately. By then, Ivory was already holding court near the champagne fountain, radiant in my emerald green dress, the one I'd bought for this exact event. She was laughing with the promotion committee, playing the role of gracious, recovered Ophelia Blackwood perfectly. James stood beside her, his hand possessively on her waist. They looked stunning together. The perfect power couple. Robert Hartwell was just approaching the microphone for the annual recognition ceremony when I walked through the ballroom doors. The reaction was immediate. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. People looked back and forth between us like they were watching a tennis match in slow motion. Ivory's face went white, then red, then white again. James looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "I believe there's been some confusion about tonight's honoree." I walked steadily toward the front, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. Every phone in the room was out now, recording. "That woman," I pointed directly at Ivory, "is my sister, Ivory Blackwood, who has been impersonating me for the past 6 months." "This is insane," Ivory stammered, but her voice cracked on the word insane. "I'm Ophelia. She's having some kind of breakdown." "Really?" I pulled out my phone, connected it to the sound system. "Let's test that theory." The recording filled the ballroom. Ivory's voice from years ago, leaving a birthday message on Mom's answering machine. Her real voice, before she'd learned to mimic mine perfectly. Then I asked the question that would destroy her: "What's my employee ID number?" Silence. "When did I graduate college?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "What was my first pet's name?" Nothing. "James," I turned to my former fiancé, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Ask her about our first date. The real story, not the version I posted on social media." James stared at Ivory with growing horror. You said you couldn't remember because of grief." "I couldn't remember," I said quietly, "because I wasn't there." She was. Marcus Chin stepped forward from the crowd, laptop in hand. I have 6 months of digital evidence, he announced, projecting screenshots onto the wall. Login locations, IP addresses, financial records. Someone has been systematically stealing Ophelia's identity. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. I have recordings, said Detective Rivera, emerging from behind a pillar where she'd been waiting. Miss Ivory Blackwood bragging to friends about stealing her sister's better life. Should I play them? Ivory's mask finally cracked completely. You don't understand, she screamed, tears streaming down her face. She had everything. Perfect job, perfect fiancé, perfect life. She didn't deserve it more than me. So you decided to take it, I said calmly. While I was grieving our mother, you stole my identity, seduced my fiancé, and tried to steal my promotion. The promotion I earned. The silence was deafening. 200 witnesses watching Ivory Blackwood's complete destruction. Security was already moving toward her. The police Detective Rivera had called were entering through the side doors. I loved you, James whispered, staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time in months. I thought. God, I thought you were just different because of grief. You loved who she pretended to be, I replied. You never even noticed I was gone. As they led Ivory away in handcuffs, she looked back at me with pure hatred. You always were Mom's favorite, she spat. No, I said, my voice steady and clear. I was just myself. That was always enough. The ballroom erupted in whispers, camera flashes, shocked conversations. But I stood there calmly, reclaiming my space, my name, my dignity. Ophelia Blackwood was back. And she wasn't going anywhere ever again. The aftermath unfolded like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. Within hours, the video of Ivory's public breakdown had gone viral on social media. Not because people were cruel, but because the story was so unbelievable, a sister stealing an entire identity, living someone else's life while they grieved. The comments ranged from shock to support, but mostly disbelief that such elaborate deception was even possible. Ivory was charged with identity theft, fraud, and forgery. The bail hearing revealed the full scope of her crimes. She'd racked up over $30,000 in debt using my accounts, filed false tax returns in my name, even applied for loans I'd never authorized. The prosecutor called it one of the most comprehensive identity theft cases they'd ever seen. James tried to contact me for weeks afterward. Flowers, letters, desperate voicemails where he claimed he'd been manipulated and couldn't tell the difference. The irony was bitter. The man who'd promised to love me forever couldn't even recognize when I'd been replaced by an imposter. I donated every flower arrangement to the hospital where Mom had died and blocked his number. But the professional vindication was sweet. Robert Hartwell personally apologized for not recognizing the deception sooner. The promotion I'd earned was officially mine, along with a raise and additional security protocols implemented because of my case. My colleagues treated me like a survivor, which I suppose I was. We should have known, my assistant said during my first day back. She couldn't find the coffee maker in the break room. You practically lived on that machine. The small details they'd overlooked suddenly seemed obvious. Wrong coffee order. Different handwriting. Inability to locate files she should have known by heart. Ivory had been performing successful Ophelia, but she'd never truly understood what made me competent at my job. The hardest part was the reflection. Sitting in my apartment, the same space where I'd broken down completely just months ago, I tried to understand how I'd missed the signs for so long. But grief had made me vulnerable in ways I'd never imagined. While I was drowning in loss, barely able to function, she'd seen opportunity. I thought betrayal had broken me beyond repair. Instead, it had stripped away everything I thought I needed to be happy and forced me to rebuild from scratch. The new Ophelia was sharper, more aware, less trusting but somehow stronger. I'd learned to rely on myself completely, to verify what others took for granted, to trust my instincts even when they seemed paranoid. Most surprisingly, I felt grateful. Not for the betrayal itself, but for discovering my own resilience. Before this nightmare, I'd defined myself through relationships: successful girlfriend, devoted daughter, reliable employee. Now I knew I could survive even when all those identities were stripped away. The apartment felt different now. Not like a crime scene, but like a sanctuary I'd fought to reclaim. I'd redecorated completely, erasing any trace of the woman who'd once cowered on this bathroom floor. New furniture, new artwork, new energy. Even my daily routines had evolved. I'd started journaling, something the old Ophelia would have dismissed as too touchy-feely. But documenting my thoughts, my healing, my anger, my growth, it helped me process the trauma and reclaim my own narrative. The woman who'd been too broken to notice her life being stolen was gone. In her place stood someone who would never be caught off guard again. 3 months after the Christmas party confrontation, I received a letter from Ivory in prison. I held it for a full hour before deciding not to open it. Whatever she had to say, apologies, justifications, more blame, I didn't need to hear it. Her words had already done enough damage. Now it was time for mine to rebuild what she'd tried to destroy. And I was just getting started. I'm back at the same coffee shop where it all began. Same vanilla latte, same corner table, but everything else has changed. The barista, Sarah, I've learned her name now, smiles as she hands me my drink. Good morning, Miss Blackwood. The usual? The usual, I confirm, and the words feel like reclaiming territory. 6 months ago, I sat in this exact spot with trembling hands, watching my world collapse as I discovered my sister had been living my life. The woman who cried over credit card statements, who couldn't understand how someone could steal an entire existence, feels like a stranger now. Today, I'm wearing a new dress one Ivory never touched, never coveted, never tried to claim. My engagement ring is gone, sold months ago. The money went to a fund for identity theft victims. Poetic justice. I check my phone and smile at the notification. My book proposal, Stolen, a memoir of identity, betrayal, and reclamation, just got approved by a major publisher. Turns out, surviving the impossible makes for compelling reading. Ivory will serve 18 months. James moved to another city, unable to face the humiliation of being fooled so completely. I've heard he's in therapy, trying to understand how he lived with a stranger for months without noticing. But their downfall isn't what satisfies me most. What satisfies me is this: I'm genuinely happy now. Not the performed happiness Ivory mimicked so well, but real contentment that comes from knowing exactly who I am and what I'm worth. The woman who almost lost everything learned the most important lesson of all: you can't steal someone's essence, only their circumstances. And circumstances can always be rebuilt. I raise my latte in a silent toast to the broken woman who once sat here. She thought her life was ending. She had no idea it was just beginning. My name is Ophelia Blackwood. I am irreplaceable, irreducible, and finally, irrefutably myself. And no one will ever steal that again.